I watched my daughter-in-law throw my granddaughter's baby blanket into the trash like it meant nothing. But the way she shoved it down, the panic in her eyes, something felt wrong. I waited for her to go inside, climbed into the dumpster, and took the blanket home. That's when I felt something hard hidden deep inside the fabric. I cut the seam open with shaking hands, and found a phone containing proof that my son's accidental death had been planned for years. And what happened next, no one saw coming. Emily came out of the garage dragging 2 heavy black trash bags behind her. I almost waved at her through the windshield, until I saw the corner of a mint green blanket hanging from the top of one bag. My breath caught instantly. Sophie's blanket. The one I had knitted by hand the month before she was born. Emily looked around once, fast, nervous, then shoved the bag deep into the dumpster with a violent push. The metal lid slammed shut so hard it echoed across the quiet street. And something inside me turned cold. Why would she throw that away? Daniel loved that blanket. Sophie used to sleep wrapped inside it every night. Emily knew that. She knew exactly what it meant to our family. Unless the blanket carried a memory she wanted gone. People don't throw memories into the trash like that. Unless those memories know too much. Emily hurried back into the house without looking behind her. No hesitation. No sadness. Nothing. I waited maybe 30 seconds. Then I opened my car door and crossed the street so quickly my knees nearly gave out beneath me. The smell hit me first when I lifted the dumpster lid. Rotten food. Bleach. Wet cardboard. I started tearing through the garbage bags with both hands like a desperate woman searching for oxygen. Come on. Come on. My fingers finally caught soft fabric. The blanket was damp and ice cold. Coffee stains covered one corner. Something sticky clung to the lace trim. I pulled it against my chest anyway. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely breathe. And the second I touched it, I knew something was wrong. Not emotionally. Physically. There was weight inside it. I froze beside the dumpster, staring down at the blanket in my arms. Slowly, I pressed my palm across the middle layer of cotton. A hard shape pressed back. Rectangular. Hidden deep between the fabric. My pulse exploded. What the hell? I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers hurt. The blanket sat on the passenger seat beside me like it was carrying something alive. The moment I got inside, I locked the front door, carried the blanket into my bedroom, and spread it across the bed under the lamp. Then I found the seam. Tiny stitches. Careful. Precise. Almost invisible. Someone had opened the blanket before. Someone had hidden something inside it. I grabbed my sewing scissors from the nightstand drawer. My hands shook harder with every thread I cut. Snip. Another stitch. Snip. The sound felt unnaturally loud in the room. The opening widened. I slid my fingers inside the cotton lining. Cold metal touched my skin. My stomach dropped. And then an old black cell phone fell out onto the bed. I stared at that phone on my bed, and one terrifying thought kept repeating inside my head. Emily never meant for anyone to find this. If you've ever looked into someone's eyes and felt they were hiding something right in front of you, you know how quickly fear turns into obsession. Because once doubt enters your mind, it doesn't leave quietly. So tell me honestly, what would you do? Stay silent and protect the family? Or keep digging? Even if the truth destroys everything. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. And subscribe to Family Secrets if you enjoy family stories filled with betrayal, buried lies, and secrets dark enough to keep people awake at night. My son Daniel had always been the kind of man people trusted instantly. He was a pediatric surgeon at St. Vincent Medical Center, the type who stayed late without complaining, who remembered nurses' birthdays, who called me every Sunday no matter how exhausted he was. Even as a child, he had a softness in him that made people feel safe. Maybe that was why Emily fooled him so easily. He met her at the hospital. She was working as a nurse in the emergency department. Tall, elegant, calm under pressure. Daniel talked about her constantly after their first date. "Mom, she's different." I remember smiling at him over dinner while he described her laugh, her perfume, the way she touched his arm when she spoke. He looked happy in a way I hadn't seen since his father died. So I tried to ignore the feeling in my stomach. Because the truth is, Emily unsettled me from the beginning. Not because she was rude. Not because she was cold. Quite the opposite. She was too perfect. Too polished. Some people smile so perfectly it starts to look like camouflage. The first time she came to my house, she brought flowers, expensive wine, homemade pie. She hugged me before sitting down. She called me Mom, after only 3 weeks of dating Daniel. And somehow that made me even more uncomfortable. But Daniel loved her blindly. So I buried my doubts and told myself I was being paranoid. Older women always get suspicious of younger wives, right? That's what I kept thinking. Then Emily got pregnant with Sophie, and Daniel became unbearable in the sweetest way possible. He painted the nursery himself. He bought parenting books. He called me at midnight once just to tell me he had felt the baby kick. "I've never been this happy before," he whispered. That sentence still destroys me. Because 6 months later he was dead. Emily called me on a Tuesday afternoon, screaming, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Margaret, oh my God, Daniel fell, there's blood everywhere, please hurry." I drove to the hospital like a madwoman. Red lights blurred past me. My hand slipped on the steering wheel from sweat. By the time I reached the emergency room, Emily was already there outside trauma care, curled into a chair. Perfect makeup ruined by tears. Bloodstains on her sleeve. The second she saw me, she collapsed into my arms. "He fell down the stairs," she sobbed. I tried to help him, I tried. And at the time, I believed her. A doctor walked toward us 20 minutes later. I still remember his face. That careful expression doctors wear before they destroy someone's life. Severe head trauma. Cardiac arrest. They couldn't save him. I hit the floor before I even realized I was screaming. Emily held me while I cried. That part haunts me now. Because looking back, why does everything feel staged? Why do I remember her watching me cry instead of crying herself? Why do I remember her fixing her sleeve before speaking to police? And why? Why did she stop crying the second people stopped looking at her? There's one detail from that hospital night I ignored for 3 years. One tiny detail. And once I finally understood what it meant, everything changed. After Daniel's funeral, Emily slowly began pulling Sophie away from me piece by piece. At first, the excuses sounded reasonable. "She has a fever. She's sleeping. We're busy this weekend." Then the replies became shorter. Sometimes she wouldn't answer at all. I would stare at my phone for hours waiting for a message that never came. Sometimes I drove past the house just to see if Sophie was outside playing. Most days the curtains stayed closed. And every time Emily opened the door, she ended the conversation quickly, like she was afraid I might notice something if I stayed too long. "Sorry, Margaret, today isn't good." Door shut. Another unanswered text. Another week without seeing my granddaughter. I kept blaming myself. Maybe I was too emotional, too controlling, too attached. But deep down, another thought had already started growing quietly inside me. People who hide secrets don't begin with lies. They begin by isolating witnesses. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the old black phone while the charger cable trembled in my hands. The battery icon finally appeared on the screen, weak, flickering, barely alive. I held my breath without realizing it. Come on. Please turn on. The room felt too quiet. Even the ticking clock beside my lamp sounded aggressive now. Every second stretched tighter across my nerves. Then the screen lit up completely. No password. No lock screen. Nothing. The phone opened directly to the main menu as if whoever hid it never imagined another person would ever hold it again. That terrified me more than if it had been locked. Because hidden things are usually protected. This one wasn't. My fingertips shook against the screen. I could barely press the icons correctly. Messages. Gallery. Videos. Contacts. I chose the photo gallery first. And the second the first image appeared, everything inside me shattered. Emily stood beside a man I had never seen before. Young. Dark hair. Expensive watch. His arm wrapped tightly around her waist while he kissed her cheek. But it wasn't the kiss that destroyed me. It was the date. 4 years ago. Daniel was still alive. I blinked hard, hoping I had read it wrong. I hadn't. My chest tightened so violently I thought I might faint. I swiped to the next photo. Another restaurant. Another hotel. Another embrace. Emily laughing in his arms. Emily sitting on his lap inside a car. Emily kissing him like she had never loved anyone else in her life. Every single photo was dated during her marriage to my son. No! The word barely escaped my mouth. I kept scrolling. Beach trips. Wine glasses. Hotel rooms. Selfies in mirrors. Entire weekends together while Daniel believed he had a faithful wife waiting at home. My breathing became shallow. The walls suddenly felt too close. I pressed a hand against my mouth, but it didn't stop the sob that escaped me. Daniel loved her completely. He worked double shifts to support that family. He painted Sophie's nursery himself. He kissed Emily goodbye every morning thinking she was the safest place in his life. And all that time, who had my son been sleeping beside? Not a wife. Not a partner. A stranger. No, something worse than a stranger. Because strangers don't destroy you this personally. One photo stopped me cold. Emily and the man were standing in front of a beach house. He held her from behind while she leaned against his chest, smiling directly at the camera. On her left hand was her wedding ring. Still there. Still shining. I stared at that ring for several seconds without blinking. The same ring Daniel had spent months saving money to buy. The same ring Emily wore at his funeral while pretending to collapse from grief. My stomach twisted violently. Suddenly memories started replaying differently inside my head. Emily checking her phone constantly during family dinners. Emily stepping outside to take work calls. Emily becoming irritated whenever Daniel talked about expanding the family. God, how much of their marriage had been real? I wiped my eyes quickly and forced myself to keep looking. Because by then, another fear had already begun crawling through me. If Emily could lie about love that easily, what else had she lied about? My hands were already numb by the time I noticed another folder inside the gallery. Videos. There were 12 of them. Short clips. Different dates. Different file sizes. For 1 second I considered stopping right there. Closing the phone. Pretending I had never found any of this. Because cheating was already enough to destroy a family. But something inside me kept whispering the same terrifying thought. There's more. I pressed play on the first video. The screen flickered. Then my stomach dropped so violently I grabbed the edge of the bed to steady myself. I recognized the living room instantly. Gray sectional sofa. White curtains. The framed wedding photo above the fireplace. Daniel's house. No, not just Daniel's house. The house he paid for. The house where he believed he was building a family. The camera angle looked hidden, almost accidental, like a phone left recording on a shelf. A few seconds passed before Emily walked into frame laughing. Laughing. Not smiling politely. Not nervous. Real laughter. The kind I hadn't heard from her even during Daniel's happiest moments. Ryan entered behind her. His hand slid around her waist immediately. She leaned back into him without hesitation. He kissed her neck. She turned and kissed him harder. Right there. On Daniel's couch. I stopped breathing. Oh my God. My voice cracked apart. I wanted to stop the video. I should have stopped it. But pain has a strange way of forcing people to keep looking. Emily climbed onto his lap while they laughed about something off camera. At one point she threw her head back, and the sound of her laughter filled my bedroom. That sound will haunt me until I die. Because Daniel never heard that version of her. That free. That alive. There is no betrayal crueler than betrayal that happens inside your own home. I slammed the phone face down onto the bed, nausea rising violently into my throat. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed both hands against my mouth trying not to scream. How many times had Daniel walked into that room after working 16-hour shifts? How many times had he kissed Emily goodbye in the same place where she betrayed him? The rage inside me finally began to wake up. Not grief anymore. Something darker. Something sharper. My eyes returned slowly to the phone. And that's when I opened the messages. At first they looked almost ordinary. Flirting. Late-night conversations. Photos. Then the tone changed. The deeper I scrolled, the colder my body became. Emily. I can't keep pretending with him anymore. Ryan. Then leave. Emily. It's not that simple. A few messages later. There has to be another way. I froze. My thumb stopped moving across the screen. Ryan replied almost immediately. What are you talking about? Emily. He needs to disappear. The room tilted around me. Disappear. Not divorce. Not separation. Disappear. I kept reading, my heartbeat hammering so hard it hurt. Ryan told her she sounded crazy. Emily kept pushing. We could finally be together. He's the only thing standing in the way. Then came the message that made my blood run cold. Make it look natural. I couldn't breathe anymore. Every memory from the hospital came flooding back all at once. The stairs. The blood. Emily crying into my shoulder. If this wasn't an accident, then how exactly did my son die? I scrolled faster now, panic taking over completely. My fingers slipped against the screen from sweat. More arguments. More desperation. Then suddenly silence. The messages stopped 1 week before Daniel's death. No goodbye. No explanation. Nothing. As if both of them understood they should never write another word again. A horrible pressure built inside my chest. Because by then I already knew the truth. I just needed proof. And then, I found the final note. My hand shook so violently I almost dropped the phone before I even opened the note. It was saved separately. No title. No explanation. Just a few lines written 2 days before Daniel died. Tuesday, 3 p.m. He'll be alone. My throat tightened instantly. I kept reading. Make it quick. Everything must look natural. No one can suspect anything. The room disappeared around me. For a moment, I honestly thought my heart had stopped beating. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a sharp crack, but I barely heard it. Because suddenly I could see everything. Daniel lying at the bottom of those stairs. Emily screaming on the phone. The blood on her sleeve. Her perfectly controlled tears. It all came rushing back at once, but now the memories looked different. Twisted. Corrupted. Not an accident. A setup. Oh God. I pressed both hands against my face, but the sobs still forced their way out. My body folded forward like something inside me had finally broken completely. My son hadn't fallen. He hadn't slipped. Someone wanted him dead. And the woman who slept beside him every night had helped plan it. The thought was so monstrous my brain kept rejecting it. 1 second I believed it completely. The next I wanted to throw the phone away and convince myself this was fake somehow. But deep down I already knew. Mothers know when something is wrong with their children. Maybe I had known for years. Maybe I just didn't want to survive the truth. I sat on the bedroom floor for nearly 20 minutes staring at nothing. Then another fear hit me. What if Emily realized the blanket was gone? What if she came looking for it? I grabbed the phone from the floor so quickly my shoulders slammed into the bed frame. I locked every door in the house. Closed every curtain. Then I called the only person I trusted completely. Helen Brooks. My oldest friend. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. Margaret? Do you know what time it is? Helen. My voice cracked instantly. I need you to come over right now. Silence. Then her tone changed. What happened? I can't explain on the phone. Please. Just come. 25 minutes later, headlights swept across my living room window. Helen walked inside wearing jeans, a gray sweater, and the expression of someone already preparing for bad news. The second she saw my face, she stopped cold. Jesus Christ. Margaret. I didn't hug her. I didn't even speak. I just handed her the phone. First she looked confused. Then she opened the gallery. I watched her face change little by little. Confusion. Shock. Disgust. Fear. She sat down slowly on the couch without taking her eyes off the screen. The house stayed completely silent except for the faint sound of her breathing getting heavier with every message she read. Finally she looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. Margaret. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. This is evidence of murder. Hearing another person say the words out loud made the entire nightmare suddenly feel real. Not suspicion anymore. Not paranoia. Murder. I covered my mouth again as fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. Helen kept scrolling through the messages, reading faster now. Oh my God. Then she froze on the final note. I saw the exact second it hit her. Her shoulders stiffened. She looked at me carefully, like she was afraid the truth itself might destroy me. And maybe it already had. Helen didn't leave that night. Neither of us could. The moment she finished reading the messages, something shifted between us. This was no longer grief. No longer suspicion whispered in the dark to make ourselves feel crazy. Now we were looking at a crime. And crimes leave trails. Helen grabbed my laptop from the dining table and opened Facebook first. If this guy was close to Emily, she muttered. He got careless somewhere. Ryan Mercer. That was the name from the messages. The search results appeared instantly. Too instantly. A profile picture loaded onto the screen, and my stomach tightened again. Same dark hair. Same expensive watch. Same arrogant half-smile from the beach photos. Found him, Helen whispered. Ryan's profile wasn't private. That surprised all of us. Men like him always believe they're smarter than consequences. We started scrolling. Gym photos. Luxury bars. Weekend trips. And then, Emily. Not directly. Never tagged. But always there. A reflection in a restaurant mirror. A hand with her wedding ring visible beside a wine glass. A blurry figure in the background wearing the same cream-colored coat Emily owned. Careless. Tiny mistakes. The kind people make when they think nobody is watching. Helen leaned closer to the screen. Look at the dates. I did. Every post lined up perfectly with the timeline before Daniel died. Vacations Emily claimed were nursing conferences. Weekends Daniel spent working overnight shifts. Hotel locations only 2 hours from our town. The affair wasn't random. It was a second life. A fully constructed relationship running parallel to my son's marriage for years. I felt sick all over again. But Helen suddenly stopped scrolling. Wait. Her voice sharpened. There's more. Ryan had uploaded a photo standing beside a black Mercedes 3 months after Daniel's death. New watch. New apartment. New life. The caption made my blood run cold. Finally free. I stared at those 2 words so long my eyes began to blur. Free. As if Daniel's death had unlocked something for them. As if my son had been an obstacle instead of a human being. But the worst part came an hour later. Helen insisted we search public records next. Insurance claims. Property filings. Financial disclosures. First it felt impossible. Too many pages. Too much information. But then Helen suddenly inhaled sharply. Oh my God! She turned the laptop toward me. Life insurance payout. $600,000. Beneficiary. Emily Carter. Approved 3 months after Daniel's death. I couldn't even process the number properly. $600,000. My son died and she got rich. Before I could speak, Helen clicked another document. Bank transfer records. One transaction stood out immediately. $250,000 transferred to Ryan Mercer. 2 weeks after the insurance money cleared. The room fell silent again. No confusion anymore. No room for denial. Payment. That's what it was. A payment. My entire body went cold while rage flooded through me so fast it almost hurt physically. I remembered Emily collapsing against Daniel's coffin at the funeral, crying louder than everyone else, holding Sophie while guests comforted her. And all that time the money was already coming. The woman crying the hardest at the funeral is sometimes the one getting paid the most. I pushed the laptop away violently and stood up so fast the chair crashed backward onto the floor. She killed him. The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. Helen looked at me carefully, not correcting me, not calming me down, because now she believed it too. And somewhere deep inside my chest, grief finally began turning into something far more dangerous. Rage. Neither of us slept. The anger inside me was too alive now. Every answer we uncovered only opened another wound underneath it. By 3 in the morning, empty coffee cups covered my kitchen table while Helen continued digging through public records on the laptop. Then suddenly she stopped typing. Completely froze. Margaret. Something in her voice made my stomach tighten instantly. What? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly turned the screen toward me. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. A scanned birth certificate. Sophie Grace Carter. Date of birth. Hospital information. Daniel listed as father. Then my eyes moved lower. Mother Vanessa Hale. I stared at the name without breathing. No, that was impossible. I grabbed the laptop closer so hard it nearly slipped off the table. I read the document again. Then again. Vanessa Hale. Not Emily Carter. Not my daughter-in-law. Someone else. This has to be fake, I whispered. But even while saying it, I already knew it wasn't. Official county seal. Medical signatures. Filing numbers. Everything was real. My chest started hurting again. For years, I believed Emily carried Sophie inside her body. I bought maternity clothes with her. I sat beside her during baby showers. I held her hand while she pretended to cry about contractions. Pretended. Oh God. Had all of it been fake? I suddenly remembered something I buried years ago. Emily never let anyone touch her stomach during pregnancy. Not even Daniel sometimes. At the time I thought she was private. Now every memory looked poisonous. Helen kept staring at the document. This changes everything. No. I shook my head slowly, trying to force reality back into place. No, there has to be some explanation. But another question had already begun screaming inside my mind. If Emily wasn't Sophie's mother, then how did she get that baby? The silence between us turned unbearable. Helen started typing again, faster this time. Searching Vanessa Hale. Scrolling articles. Court databases. Social media archives. Then she found it. A local news article from 4 years ago. Missing young mother. Infant still unaccounted for. My blood went cold. Helen clicked it open. A photograph filled the screen. Young woman. Dark blonde hair. Green eyes. Soft smile. Vanessa Hale. She couldn't have been older than 24. Under the photo was another line that made my pulse spike violently. Last seen with her 2-month-old daughter. 2 months old. Sophie would have been 2 months old at exactly that time. I pushed back from the table so suddenly the chair legs scraped violently against the floor. No! The room started spinning. Helen kept reading aloud quietly, almost like she was afraid the words themselves might become real. Vanessa disappeared after leaving work. Her vehicle was found abandoned. No signs of forced entry. No confirmed suspects. Then Helen stopped. Her eyes slowly lifted toward mine. Fear had fully entered the room now. Real fear. Margaret. I could barely answer. What? Helen swallowed hard. What if Emily didn't adopt Sophie? A horrible pressure crushed against my ribs. I already knew what she was about to say, but hearing it out loud felt unbearable. Helen's voice dropped to a whisper. What if she took her? For a second, I genuinely couldn't process the sentence. My brain refused to accept it. The idea was too monstrous, too insane. But every piece was starting to fit together now. The fake pregnancy, the hidden affair, the murder messages, the missing mother. Sophie. Sweet little Sophie sleeping in princess pajamas while the truth rotted underneath her entire life. I looked back at Vanessa's photo again, and suddenly something hit me so hard it nearly stole the air from my lungs. Sophie had her eyes. Not Emily's. Vanessa's. How long? My voice shook violently. How long has Emily been lying to all of us? Neither of us spoke after that. Because deep down we were both beginning to understand the same terrifying possibility. Daniel may not have known the woman he married at all. Helen kept digging while I sat frozen at the kitchen table, staring at Vanessa Hale's photograph like somehow she might step out of the screen and explain all of this herself. Please let this end here. Please let the girl just be missing. But monsters rarely stop at one crime. A few minutes later, Helen suddenly inhaled sharply. Not surprised this time. Fear. Real fear. Margaret. I looked up immediately. Helen's face had gone completely pale. What now? She didn't answer. She simply turned the laptop toward me again. Another article. Updated 6 months after Vanessa disappeared. Body of missing woman found in wooded area. My vision blurred before I even finished reading the headline. No. The article opened slowly. Every second felt unbearable. Human remains discovered 30 miles outside the county. Dental records confirmed identity. Vanessa Hale. Cause of death. Severe blunt force trauma to the head. My heartbeat stopped. Head trauma. Exactly like Daniel. The room suddenly felt poisoned. I grabbed the edge of the table so hard my fingers cramped painfully. Helen kept reading in silence while tears started sliding down my face again. Police believed Vanessa died shortly after her disappearance. No suspects identified. Case eventually went cold. Cold. That word made me sick. Because while the police buried paperwork in storage boxes, Emily had been raising Vanessa's baby inside my son's house. I stood up so abruptly my chair crashed backward onto the floor. She killed her. The words came out raw, broken, but I knew they were true. Helen didn't argue, didn't calm me down, because now the pattern was impossible to ignore. A missing mother, a stolen baby, a husband suddenly dead from accidental head trauma, money transfers, secret messages. Every road led back to Emily, and somehow the most terrifying part wasn't the violence. It was how normal she looked while doing all of it. The casseroles she brought neighbors after funerals, the soft voice, the nurse uniforms, the perfect smile. The dangerous killers aren't always the loud ones. The most terrifying kind are the ones who know how to make evil look ordinary. I started pacing across the kitchen trying to breathe through the panic crushing my ribs. Images slammed through my head one after another. Emily feeding Sophie breakfast. Emily crying at church. Emily hugging me after Daniel died. How many moments had been fake? How many tears were rehearsed? Then another thought hit me so hard I stopped walking instantly. What if Daniel found out? Helen looked at me carefully. I kept going before she could answer. What if he discovered Sophie wasn't hers? My voice cracked violently. What if that's why he died? The silence afterward felt monstrous. Because suddenly Daniel's death didn't look random anymore. It looked necessary. Necessary to protect the lie. Necessary to protect Emily. A chill crawled slowly down my spine. If she could kill Vanessa, if she could steal a baby, if she could stand beside my son's coffin pretending to grieve while collecting insurance money behind closed doors, then what else was she capable of? Helen closed the laptop carefully. We need to go to the police. I looked toward the dark hallway leading deeper into my house. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I was afraid Emily might already know we had uncovered everything. We waited until sunrise before leaving for the police station. Neither of us trusted the dark anymore. I carried the phone inside my purse the entire drive like it was radioactive. Every red light made me nervous. Every car behind us felt suspicious. By then, fear had fully settled into my bones. Because if Emily really murdered Daniel, then we were no longer dealing with lies. We were dealing with a predator. The front desk officer almost dismissed us at first. Two older women walking into a station with conspiracy theories, and an old cell phone didn't exactly scream credibility. But everything changed the moment Detective Marcus Reed entered the room. Tall, mid-40s, tired eyes. The kind of face that looked permanently disappointed in humanity. He sat across from me quietly while I explained everything from the beginning. The blanket, the hidden phone, the affair, Vanessa Hale, the insurance money. I expected skepticism, interruptions, questions designed to make me sound unstable. Instead, Marcus barely spoke. He just listened. Completely still. Every now and then his jaw tightened slightly while scrolling through the messages himself. Then he reached the videos. The room became very quiet. I watched his expression harden little by little as Emily laughed in Daniel's living room with Ryan wrapped around her waist. When the video ended, Marcus set the phone down carefully. How long ago did your son die? 3 years. He nodded slowly. Then he opened the final note. Tuesday, 3 p.m. He'll be alone. Marcus read it twice. A long breath left his nose. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and looked directly at me. Mrs. Collins, The pause nearly stopped my heart. We're reopening your son's case. For 1 second, relief hit me so hard I almost cried. Not because justice was guaranteed, because someone finally believed me, but fear came right behind it, because reopening the case meant something else too. Emily would eventually find out. Marcus moved quickly after that. Search warrants, financial subpoenas, digital recovery teams. Within 48 hours, Ryan Mercer was brought in for questioning. Marcus allowed Helen and me to watch through the observation window. Ryan looked very different in person than he did online. Smaller somehow, sweating through his expensive shirt, leg bouncing uncontrollably under the table. Marcus entered the interrogation room carrying a thick folder and placed it down slowly in front of him. Ryan tried confidence first. I already told officers I barely knew Emily. Marcus didn't react. He simply slipped printed photographs across the table one by one. Hotel pictures, beach selfies, bank transfers. Ryan's composure cracked almost immediately. His breathing changed first, then his hands, then came the silence. Long, heavy. Marcus leaned forward slightly. You were sleeping with a married woman whose husband ended up dead. Ryan stared at the table. No comment. Marcus slid another paper toward him. $250,000 transferred into Ryan's account. 2 weeks after Daniel's death. Ryan finally looked up. Fear had fully entered his face now. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. My entire body stiffened behind the glass. Marcus caught it instantly. Like what? Ryan rubbed both hands over his mouth. I loved her, okay? She said Daniel was controlling. She said he ruined her life. But you were still seeing her while he was alive. Ryan nodded weakly. Yes. The admission hit me harder than I expected. Hearing the affair confirmed out loud made Daniel's humiliation suddenly feel real in a completely different way. Marcus kept pushing. Did Emily ever talk about wanting Daniel dead? Ryan hesitated. Too long. I need a lawyer. Marcus studied him carefully for several seconds. Then he stood up. And right before leaving the room, he said something that made Ryan visibly panic. We're requesting authorization to exhume Daniel Collins' body. Ryan's head snapped upward instantly. Color drained from his face. No. Marcus stopped at the door. If your story matches the evidence, you'll be fine. Ryan looked like he might vomit. Because somewhere deep down, he already knew what they were going to find once Daniel's grave was opened. The second autopsy took place 4 days later. I wasn't allowed inside the medical examiner's office, but Marcus called me the moment the preliminary findings came back. His voice sounded different this time. Heavier. Mrs. Collins, we found evidence inconsistent with an accidental fall. My knees nearly gave out beneath me. I gripped the kitchen counter so hard my wrist cramped. What kind of evidence? A pause. Then Marcus answered carefully. Your son had deep bruising around both wrists. I stopped breathing. Bruising. Not from falling. From being restrained. Marcus continued speaking, but every word felt farther away now, drowned beneath the sound of blood pounding inside my ears. There were also indications of force applied before impact. Before impact. Before the fall. Daniel hadn't simply lost his balance. Someone held him. Someone stopped him from escaping. Then pushed him. I slid slowly down against the cabinets until I hit the kitchen floor. The phone nearly slipped from my hand again. All I could picture was my son fighting for his life inside his own home. Confused. Terrified. Looking into the face of the woman he loved while realizing far too late who she really was. Oh God! My chest physically hurt now. How scared was he? The question escaped me before I realized I had spoken out loud. How scared was my son before he died? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Maybe because there was no answer crueler than the truth. I pressed my forehead against my knees as rage exploded through my body so violently it almost made me nauseous. Daniel trusted her. That was the part destroying me the most. He probably never even defended himself at first. He would have tried to understand, tried to calm her down, tried to believe the woman standing in front of him wasn't capable of murder. And that hesitation may have cost him his life. By that evening, Marcus officially secured an arrest warrant for Emily Carter. But Emily already knew the walls were closing in. Airport surveillance caught her 3 hours later at Columbus International. Marcus showed us the footage himself. Emily moved quickly through the terminal wearing sunglasses and a dark coat, dragging 2 suitcases behind her. Sophie wasn't with her. Thank God. 2 officers approached from opposite directions just before security. Emily saw them instantly and ran. The footage shook violently as airport officers sprinted after her through the terminal. Travelers scattered. Someone screamed. Then Emily slipped near the boarding gate. One officer grabbed her arm. Another forced her onto the floor. The moment the handcuffs locked around her wrists, something inside me finally cracked open. Not relief. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Marcus paused the footage there. Emily lying face down against the airport floor. Hair disheveled. Cheek pressed against cold tile. For the first time since Daniel died, she looked afraid. Police searched her luggage immediately afterward. What they found made the entire station go silent. $500,000 in cash. Multiple fake passports. Different identities. Different states. Different names. She wasn't planning a vacation. She was disappearing. Again. Marcus rubbed one hand slowly across his jaw while reading through the inventory report. She was preparing long before you found that phone. I stared at Emily frozen on the paused security footage. All those years, all those lies. And the second she sensed exposure, she was ready to abandon everything. Even Sophie. But the most terrifying part still hadn't surfaced yet. Because later that night, police finally searched Emily's house. And what they found inside was worse than any of us imagined. By the time police entered Emily's house with a full search warrant, the entire place felt different to me. Not like a home anymore. Like a stage after the actors had fled. Marcus allowed me to stand near the kitchen entrance, while forensic teams moved room to room collecting evidence. Flashlights swept across walls. Cabinet doors slammed open. Officers photographed everything. Sophie's toys still sat in the corner of the living room. A pink stuffed rabbit on the couch. Tiny shoes near the stairs. Normal life frozen in place beside unimaginable horror. That contrast made my skin crawl. One detective emerged from the upstairs bedroom holding several prescription bottles in sealed bags. Another carried stacks of financial records. Marcus barely reacted anymore. At this point, every new discovery only confirmed how deep Emily's deception really went. But something still bothered him. I could see it. He kept studying the floor plan in silence, walking slowly through the hallway like he was listening for something invisible. Then he stopped near the dining room wall. Hold on. Everyone turned. Marcus tapped lightly against the drywall once. Twice. A different sound answered from inside. Hello. The entire room changed instantly. 2 officers moved furniture aside while another brought in tools. My pulse started climbing so fast I could hear it in my ears again. What is it? I whispered. Nobody answered. The first strike against the wall echoed through the house like a gunshot. Dust exploded into the air. Another hit followed. Then another. until finally a section of drywall cracked inward. One officer reached inside carefully and pulled out a steel safe. Small, heavy, hidden perfectly between the beams. Helen grabbed my arm so tightly it hurt. "Oh my God!" Marcus carried the safe onto the dining table while another detective worked the lock mechanism. The room had gone completely silent except for metal clicking under the technician's hands. 10 seconds. 20. Then the safe opened. The smell hit first. Paper. Dust. Something old. Inside were dozens of neatly organized folders. USB drives. Cash bundles. Burner phones. My stomach twisted violently. This wasn't panic hiding. This was preparation. Years of preparation. Marcus carefully lifted the first USB drive and handed it to the digital technician. Within minutes, they connected it to a laptop on the kitchen counter. The first video file loaded automatically. Emily appeared on screen. Not crying. Not pretending. Calm. Composed. She sat facing the camera wearing dark blue scrubs, hands folded neatly in her lap like she was recording a business presentation. The entire room froze. "My name is Emily Carter," she said evenly. "If you are watching this, things did not go according to plan." A chill shot through my entire body. Marcus stared at the screen without blinking. Emily continued calmly. "Certain situations required permanent solutions. Permanent solutions. Not people. Not lives. Solutions." The way she spoke made everything even more horrifying. No emotion. No guilt. Just organization. Another folder opened beside the video. Financial spreadsheets. Dates. Names. Medical information. Insurance policies. Helen covered her mouth instantly. Oh God! It wasn't random chaos hidden inside that safe. It was an archive. Structured. Categorized. Documented carefully like corporate records. Every crime organized. Every victim tracked. The deeper investigators searched, the worse it became. Multiple bank accounts under fake identities. Property leases in different states. Photographs of elderly patients from the hospital where Emily worked. Some had handwritten notes attached. Lives alone. No close family. Memory issues. I felt physically sick. Marcus turned another page slowly. Life insurance beneficiaries. Medication logs. Death dates. My legs nearly gave out beneath me again. This wasn't survival anymore. This wasn't desperation. Emily had built an entire system around manipulation, theft, and death. And somehow she had smiled through all of it like the perfect suburban wife. The horror of that realization settled over the room heavier than anything else. Because monsters are easier to survive when they look like monsters. Emily looked normal. That was the terrifying part. The second video file began automatically before anyone in the room could speak. Emily appeared again in the same chair. Same calm posture. Same terrifying composure. But this time she smiled. Not warmly. Not nervously. Proudly. "I learned very early," she said softly, "that emotional people are easy to control." Nobody moved. Even the detectives looked frozen now. Emily folded her hands together almost elegantly. People always assume monsters look violent, angry, unstable. She gave a small shrug. "That assumption protects people like me." A cold wave rolled through my stomach. She wasn't confessing with shame. She was explaining herself, like a teacher giving a lecture. Marcus quietly ordered another officer to keep recording everything. Nobody interrupted the video. Emily continued. "Daniel became a problem after Sophie entered the picture. My heartbeat exploded. He wanted more children. More legal paperwork. More questions. Questions. That word hit me like acid. Not grief. Not marriage problems. Questions. Emily tilted her head slightly toward the camera. I eliminate obstacles before they become threats. Helen made a horrified sound beside me. I couldn't breathe anymore. Obstacle. That's what my son became to her. Not a husband. Not a father. An inconvenience standing in the wrong place. And suddenly every fake smile Emily ever gave me transformed into something grotesque. The video continued. The elderly were especially useful opportunities. The room visibly reacted this time. One detective muttered, "Jesus Christ." Emily remained perfectly calm. Most of them were lonely, vulnerable, easy to manipulate. Some trusted me more than their own families. A new folder opened automatically beside the video feed. Patient files. Medication schedules. Inheritance documents. I stared at the names in disbelief while Emily spoke over them like background narration. Small dosage changes rarely attract suspicion. My stomach turned violently. She poisoned them. Helen whispered it like she didn't want the dead themselves to hear. Emily looked directly into the camera then. For the first time, her eyes showed something close to emotion. Contempt. People imagine killing requires hatred, she said quietly. It doesn't. A long pause followed. Then came the sentence that will probably haunt me until my last breath. Some people don't kill because they're angry. They kill because someone is standing in the way. Pure rage detonated inside me. I slammed both hands against the kitchen counter so hard pain shot through my palms. How many people? I screamed at the screen. How many? But Emily only kept talking calmly inside the video like she could still control the room. Another file opened. Adrian Wells. Age 78. Official cause of death. Accidental fall in bathroom. Then another document appeared underneath it. Life insurance payout transferred 3 weeks later. Beneficiary linked to Emily through a false identity. Marcus swore under his breath. The pattern was everywhere now. Older patients dying unexpectedly. Missing paperwork. Medication irregularities. Financial gain afterward. Emily hadn't snapped emotionally one day and committed a single terrible act. This was systematic, organized, practiced, a career built around human weakness. The realization overwhelmed me so violently, I had to grip the edge of the counter to stay standing. I remembered every holiday dinner, every church gathering, every time Emily smiled while holding Sophie in her lap. All those years, I thought evil would look obvious if it ever entered my family. I was wrong. Evil looked polished, helpful, patient, beautiful. That was the true horror. Not that Emily was capable of killing, but that she had learned how to wear kindness like camouflage while doing it. The final document investigators uncovered nearly shattered the room completely. A handwritten list. Names. Dates. Amounts of money beside each one. Victims. Not memories. Not regrets. Inventory. Helen burst into tears. One detective walked outside because he physically couldn't stay in the room anymore. And somewhere deep inside me, grief finally transformed completely into something hotter than pain. Hatred. The trial lasted almost 7 weeks. 7 weeks of photographs, witness statements, financial records, autopsy reports. 7 weeks of sitting only 20 feet away from the woman who destroyed my family, while pretending none of it touched her. Emily entered the courtroom every morning in pressed suits and perfectly styled hair. No tears. No shaking hands. Nothing. Cold. Controlled. Like she still believed she could outsmart reality itself. But everything changed when Ryan Mercer finally broke. The prosecution offered him a reduced sentence in exchange for full testimony, and the moment he took the stand, I knew Emily felt it too. For the first time, her jaw tightened. Ryan couldn't even look toward her. His voice cracked repeatedly while explaining how the affair began, how Emily manipulated him, how she convinced him Daniel was standing in the way of their future. Then came the part that nearly destroyed me. She told me Daniel found out about Sophie, Ryan whispered. He wanted DNA testing. He started asking questions. The courtroom went silent. Ryan wiped sweat from his forehead with trembling fingers. She said if Daniel exposed her, everything would collapse. My stomach twisted violently. Then he described the murder. Not dramatically, not emotionally. That somehow made it worse. Daniel came home early that afternoon. He and Emily argued upstairs. Ryan was already inside the house waiting. Daniel tried to leave. Emily blocked the hallway. Ryan grabbed him from behind. Daniel fought back. For one horrifying moment, I could actually picture my son realizing he had been trapped inside his own marriage. He kept asking why, Ryan said softly. He kept saying, Emily, why are you doing this? I broke down crying before he even finished. Ryan stared at the floor. She told me to do it. Every word felt like another knife entering my chest. And through all of it, Emily barely reacted. No guilt, no shame, nothing. That emptiness terrified me more than rage ever could. The verdict came 3 days later. I still remember the sound of the jury entering the courtroom. Shoes against polished floor. Papers shifting. My heart beat so loud I thought everyone around me could hear it. Emily sat perfectly still beside her attorneys. The foreperson stood. On count 1, murder in the first degree. A pause. We find the defendant guilty. The air left my lungs instantly, but the verdicts kept coming. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, multiple counts of homicide. By the time the 6th life sentence was announced, people in the gallery were openly crying. And finally, Emily lost control. Not completely. Just 1 second. One tiny crack in the mask. Her lips twitched violently. Her breathing broke. Pure hatred flashed through her eyes as deputies moved toward her with handcuffs. That moment gave me more peace than I can explain. Because monsters believe they control the ending. Until reality humiliates them publicly. Emily turned suddenly before deputies escorted her away. Her eyes found mine across the courtroom. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked small. Not powerful. Not brilliant. Just trapped. There were no cameras worshiping her anymore. No grieving widow performance. No fake smile. No audience left to manipulate. She stared at me for several seconds like she expected something. Fear. Rage. Sympathy. I gave her nothing. Not even hatred anymore. That seemed to hurt her most. Because the woman who once controlled everyone in the room now needed permission just to see sunlight. And as deputies pulled her through the courtroom doors in chains, she finally disappeared from my life exactly the way she once planned for Daniel to disappear from his. The house felt unbearably quiet after the trial ended. No police. No reporters. No courtrooms filled with grief and anger. Just me and Sophie. First the silence hurt. Then slowly it started healing us. The state eventually granted me full custody, and raising Sophie in my 70s was not something I ever expected life to give me. Some mornings I woke up exhausted before the day even began. Homework, doctor appointments, nightmares that still woke her crying sometimes. But little by little, light returned to the house again. Sophie grew into the kind of young woman Daniel would have adored. Gentle, brilliant, curious about everything. When she turned 19, she told me she wanted to study medicine. I cried the entire drive home after helping her move into campus housing. "You okay, Mom, Grandma?" she teased while hugging me. Mom, Grandma. That became her name for me after she was little. Not Grandma. Not Mom. Both. Like somehow love had rebuilt our broken family into something new instead of letting it die. Years passed. The nightmares faded. And one winter evening, Sophie came home carrying a small wrapped box in her hands. "I made something for you," she said softly. I opened it slowly. Inside was a mint green baby blanket. My breath caught instantly. The same color as the original. Same soft yarn. Same careful stitching. But this one felt different the moment I touched it. Lighter somehow. Cleaner. Sophie smiled when she saw tears filling my eyes. "Don't worry," she whispered. "This one doesn't have any secrets sewn inside." That sentence broke something open inside me all over again. Not pain this time. Relief. Because after years of lies, death, betrayal, and buried horror, something good had finally survived. And maybe that's the part people forget most often. Evil can destroy families, but love can rebuild them too. There are secrets stitched inside some families for years, until one person becomes brave enough to rip the seams open. But if that person was someone you once called family, would you still want the truth? And if someone you loved ever betrayed you from behind a smile, tell me your story in the comments below. And subscribe to Family Secrets for more stories about betrayal, hidden darkness, and emotional justice people never forget.